Let's talk to the Mail's Andrew Pearce and the Mirror's Kevin Maguire. And from Kyiv, the journalist John Sweeney. You're still there, John?
I am. And there are no Russian tanks on my street. So here I stay.
And people mention the orange hat. It is a lucky orange hat, isn't it?
Yeah, listen, I mean, there's no mystique to it. I went skiing with my kids about 4 or 5 years ago, and I just needed a woolly hat. And it was the last thing on the shop, that they'd all gone. So, like, there's no particular magic. But on the other hand, you get superstitious, and so and it's cold, so I'm wearing it.
What's the sense in Kyiv this morning, John? We know that this huge convoy wasn't in fact stalled. It was in fact mobile enough to start breaking up and encircling the city, and those Russian divisions are still moving into position now. Is the sense that you are imminently facing a ground assault, or are people there more worried about an air attack, which will just reduce the city to rubble before the troops move in?
We don't know, because the person who knows the answer to those questions is Vladimir Putin. There are reports that now Russian soldiers are like 10 miles from the centre, from where I'm speaking right now. At the moment, the electricity is still on, the internet is still on. The war is happening in the outskirts, not in the centre. That said, an American colleague, an American journalist, was shot dead by the Russians on the outskirts of Kyiv yesterday. R.I.P. brother. So there's a feeling that the noose is being tightened, and obviously that's pretty scary. Having said that, Kyiv's a big place, and the Ukrainian army is fighting like tigers.
Are the Ukrainian army responding to attacks by the Russian soldiers on the outskirts, or are they making counterattacks?
Well, all the time. Good defence is going backwards and then moving forwards a little bit. That's what's. But essentially, I have to say the news isn't great, because what happens is the Russians keep on pressing forward. Their morale is low, I think. They've had a lot of losses, and a lot of their soldiers are walking away because this is Vladimir Putin's war, not Russia's war. Having said that, a great Russia watcher said the other day, Ukraine is winning the war on Twitter, but it's not winning the real war. So for the moment, Kyiv is not besieged. It is not completely encircled, but people are worried. You just go, I mean, yesterday I did some shopping and the queue was long and people were afraid. And they were so afraid that I found myself saying a phrase, I know it's early morning, I'm not going to say it, but expletive deleted Putin in Ukrainian, and everybody fell about laughing. So the spirit is still good here, but people are afraid.
How useful are the air raid warnings? We'll be talking to a woman who's sheltering in the city with her children a bit later on, and she says that it's not like the Second World War, where you heard the sirens and you had quite a few minutes to get underground or into the tube station or whatever, because these attacks are coming in on cruise missiles and on super-fast jet aircraft. So, you know, the explosives can be landing seconds after the alarms started. Are they any use?
The alarms are for the whole city, and the city is huge. Kyiv is roughly half the size of London, so you can imagine that if there is a bomb that's falling in Harrow and you're in Westminster, as I am, kind of thing, then you're not going to hear it. For the moment, the Ukrainian air defense missile system is very good, and that's what's keeping electricity on, because the Russians keep on trying to attack the power station that keeps the lights on in Kyiv all the time, and each and every day the lights stay on so far. So for the moment, Ukrainian defense, both on the ground with the soldiers and the air defense, is strikingly good. Remember, this is day 19 of Putin's war, and the electricity's still on. That is actually pretty amazing. These people are fighting, no question.
All right, John, stay with us. Thanks for now. Let's bring Andrew and Kevin in now. Let's come back and bring it to the domestic story here this morning. What do you think about this government scheme to pay people 350 quid a month to house a Ukrainian refugee? What's your instinct?
I think, as the Refugee Council said, it's not thought through, because the people coming will be traumatised, putting them in somebody's house for 6 months. Well, You couldn't get it. They may not be properly matched. They're going to try and do it on an app. Well, you know, this isn't dating, is it? You know, these are families. They're going to need a lot of support. £350 a month is just over £10 a day. It's almost the minimum they thought they could get away with. It's kind of on benefit levels. And you know, good luck and best wishes to anybody who volunteers. And there's about 9% of the population. 5 million people have said they're interested. But I do fear it's going to be rather more difficult in practical ways to actually implement and sustain.
Yeah, Andrew, Benedict Cumberbatch says he's going to do it. Michael Gove, the Housing Secretary, says he's going to do it. But is it only going to be for those who have second homes, do you think, as opposed to a spare room at the back of the house?
Well, that's it, isn't it? I mean, I don't know Michael Gove's personal circumstances, but he's got a house in his constituency and he's got a house in central London. Benedict Cumberbatch is a very rich man, likewise, and it's much easier. I talked about this a lot on my LBC show at the weekend, and people said they wanted to do it with one room, but it's a minimum of 6 months. That's too long, in my view. How can you say to someone, you've got to take them for 6 months? What if it doesn't work out? What if they have issues? They're going to be traumatised, a lot of them. They're going to have left their menfolk back home, often,
There's going to be children without their fathers
exactly.
who are going
Young
to be
men,
traumatised. Yeah.
do you know what teenage boys can be like? It's difficult.
Susanna knows the answer.
Exactly.
Well, you know, I put lost thought into it, and I thought I can, you know, in my circumstances, I can probably house a teenage young man.
Yeah. But he won't come on his own, probably.
No, he would be with his family.
Of course he will.
And I don't have the room.
No.
I've got the finances, but I don't have the room to house a whole family. And you don't want to split up parents from their children. And of course, over 18-year-old young men are still in Ukraine.
I mean, if you think what's happened to a lot of these Afghan people we got out after the fall of Kabul, they're in hotels still, which is... So it's much more expensive for the taxpayer. So this is a cheaper option, and I think it sounds tremendous on paper, but I'm honest, I ain't doing it.
Do you think
because it wouldn't work for me?
So are you saying then you think this is actually the government sloughing off the responsibility and handing it over to
Richard,
the population?
I don't, in a sense, because look, there's this great British can-do spirit which they're tapping into, and I think that's terrific. But I still think it's fraught with problems.
Yeah. Kevin, there's also a massive financial issue. You already mentioned that it's £10 a day. I mean, is that going to be per person, or if your house...
No, it's a household.
It's a household. So it could be for four people or one person.
Or one person.
And I imagine it's to cover food, heating, electricity.
At a time when there's so many families who...
family of four, it's not going to be covered,
I think only one other country in Europe is paying, generally. Most other countries are not offering any money at all.
I squirm a little as we discuss this when you think what's going on in Ukraine and people are fleeing. But I think, Richard, the government isn't just trying to palm off a problem. I think it's looking for answers.
Yes.
If several 100,000 people do come, we've only issued 3,000 visas so far, but they think that could go.
It could be.
Into
How many million
figures.
did you say had expressed an interest?
There's about 5 million people in Britain,
Right.
because it's about 9% of the population.
Yeah, so I suppose...
So they haven't said they definitely want to do it. They've simply said, tell me more.
Yeah.
And the website has to open. People have to think about it through the practicalities. But there is a great reservoir of goodwill towards Ukraine. So I don't want to sneer at anybody who is doing it or erecting barriers which may not be there. But I do think it is pretty difficult if you have people in your house for 6 months.
It's a big commitment, and it's a huge responsibility, and it could take an emotional toll on both parties.
Exactly.
And I hope, and
I'm
I'm sure...
And there's a language issue too.
Yeah, but I'm sure that the government, and let's hope that they'll, you know, filter all of this and do the proper checks. Just want to talk about John Sweeney's there in Kyiv, and you know, expressed, John, didn't you, that it's a nerve-wracking time. I mean, your nerves must be pretty shredded at the moment. I just wonder how many people are still in Kyiv, how the possibility... You're obviously devoted to telling the story and bearing witness, and we know how important that is. But what about civilians? How many people still want to get out, and can they?
You can get out if you want to. A lot of people have already made that the decision practically by not going out. By the way, on the simple refugee issue, the European Union states have all said to the Ukrainians, you can stay in our countries for 3 years, no questions asked. Britain has not made that. So all of the discussion about whether people can put people up is secondary to the primary point is, can you get into Britain? And the answer is no, you can't at the moment. And so what the government has done has very cleverly created this secondary thicket of issues, which has got nothing to do with the primary things, that these people are desperate for somewhere now. And of course, and on the language point, there are so many people in Kyiv who speak good enough English. So I do feel that the British government is not doing anything like enough on the primary point. Secondly, the sanctions that the British government are putting up, there's a qualification for the bad actors who act for Putin's proxies. We've got to prove, the law enforcement in Britain has got to prove that they have behaved knowingly and recklessly. The Labour MP Liam Byrne has been tweeting about it. This is just nonsense. At the moment, there are Russian troops reportedly 10 miles from where I'm speaking, and the British government should be fighting back with proper and effective sanctions. And at the moment, these sanctions are as good as a colander. They've got so many holes in them. And as far as the refugees are concerned, we're not letting them in and we're now asking the public to fund it. Yeah. Nonsense.
John, very briefly, there's a lot of debate growing here about what should happen with President Zelensky. Should he stay, or is it time for him to get out of Kyiv and go somewhere safer and continue to lead from the front there? What's the feeling in Kyiv? How would people feel if he were to leave?
Oh, I can't see him leaving. I can't see him leaving. Listen, he was a comedian. He was Mr. Bean. He's a hero to his people. He's brave and good. Look at him. There he is talking to injured fighters. Vladimir Putin, when he talks to people like President Macron, there's an enormous long table. It's a difference between Putin and a fear of his death. This man is a leader. I think he's staying.
And if he were to be, God save this happening, but if he were to be killed or captured, and we know that Putin wants him dead, if that were to happen, what would be the public response? Would they be broken, or would they be fired up even further?
No, if the Nazis got Churchill, there would have been Attlee. Same here. But by the way, I mean, I'm pretty close to where the presidential headquarters are, and you know, I've got to know the soldiers. There's a soldier quite near me who's got dreads and a helmet and a gun. These people are going to fight, big time. The problem is the British government. I mean, the British people seem to want to help the Ukrainian refugees. What's the British government doing? Are they really, put your back into it, British government, help these people properly. They need ambulances and helmets and flak jackets and guns and tanks and everything. And also they need to know that their kids and the women who are leaving, and some of the women are fighting, but they want to know that they're safe, which means simply, can you get into Britain? Can you get into France? France, yes. Spain, yes. Italy, yes. Germany, yes. Britain, we'll come back to you on that.
Yeah.
Not good enough.
OK, John, thank you very much indeed.
Stay safe. Thanks very much.